Rotor number 3's time to shine, and this is the infamous rotor. There is the spot right there. I'm just go straight down from here. Dave and I are working over the 3 rotor. Isaiah would be with us, but he's working on... While he's doing that, we are putting together the 3 rotor. What we're doing right now is making sure all the dowel tolerances make sense. We've got 3 extra dowels in all of the irons and housings, and that means make them all fit. Normally on a rotary engine, there's 2, one on the bottom here and one on the top here. A dowel being this piece of metal. It's about 16 millimeters in diameter. Basically braces all the pieces from rotating. We added 3 more, and we made them very tight. He went and made them almost too tight. I got that stand that I was working on last night. I finished that up, and then we're gonna begin packing rotors. I'm telling you guys right now, I'm gonna be building a 1 rotor someday. But that's already thicker than a 1 rotor would be. Something that's a radical departure from the 4 rotor, but this is actually pretty common for OEM Mazdas, is that on a 20B, the front rotor is separate from the rear 2. And so they bolt into, again, the fat, they call it fat. That's probably not the correct term nowadays, but the fat iron in the middle, the thick iron. You actually have basically a 1 rotor on the front. All of these bolts in the variety of spots actually do go through what we've now doweled. So there's dowel there, and dowel there. And if you notice, you actually have to cut these down. These are shorter because of the fat iron. This is the spare rotor that I picked up from one of the guys on RX-7 Club. I either may use the control rings from it, may use it. It's within 20 grams of the other ones in terms of weight. It does have some pitting on this face right here. And there's still some carbon deposits on this face that I would clean up before I put it in here. But if we have just a completely unusable rotor in here for whatever reason, I do have a backup used rotor, again, to kind of prove that point. Using one of my old super seals and making sure the tolerances feel good, clean out all the rest of the gunk that's in here. I'm also cleaning out the corner seals, cleaning all that out so all of the seals that go into this thing, these being the current focus, can slide in and out. Because if they get stuck, like that right there, it's not going in all the way. You know, it's wedged in there instead of loose. Dave just saved me some heartache. I'm gonna cut off the head of this bolt and then splice down the center of that shaft right there, and then I can put my replaceable pieces of sandpaper so I can go inside those holes and clean them out. Because it's just getting dirty so quick, my sandpaper gets dirty. Oops, burnt my glove. Oh, that is perfect. Now that I just finished up with the corner seals for the rotors, I'm actually just going to clean up the corner seals themselves. I'm just going to take them and gently run them along the sandpaper, clean the faces. The outer edge, I can't guarantee a smooth, consistent circular motion, but I'll clean anything off that looks bad. Maybe I'll hit the outer edge with the Scotch-Brite instead of actual material. On the very second corner seal, I found a problem. So you can see that scratch mark, that's laying the whole face down on that surface. That shouldn't be scratching. And there's a gouge out of this. I'm assuming it's where the little apex spring that flew out of the motor, I'm assuming that is where that kind of cleaved off with that. There's a corner that needs to be taken down. I'm very glad I did this. Either it's on the sandpaper or it's on the face of that iron. Either way, that's getting taken down. Now I'm going to be taking the apex seals and just working them side by side once or twice, really just to deburr or anything of the gunk that's right down there. I'm going to hit the very back side of this with the 2000, only because that's actually the side that would touch the iron. Everything's all stacked. I mean, it's just like my other 4 rotor way over there. It's empty on the inside. Right now, all I'm doing is taking all of the side seals, which are the things that go into those areas, hand cleaning them off, not really even doing much else. So I did all of rotor 3, rotor 2, and then these are rotor 1. I only have 5 in my hand because rotor 1 and rotor 3 both donated ones to the cause. This one was destroyed here, and then the other one just happened to be one I used to work over the 4 rotor. I never thought we'd get to working on this engine so quickly. So Dave is currently transferring the center bearing from the fat iron on the old one to the new one. Before I hand the rotors off to Dave to help pack them, I'm just going through all of the side seal grooves and cleaning them out one last time. On this rotor, right there, I'm gonna have him look at that spot and make sure that once we go to pack the rotor, that the spring and the seal can do that properly. There are the 3 apex seals for the rotor number 3. They generally look in decent shape. Rotor number 2. Not really going to mess with the tops. This is, for those of you guys that aren't familiar, this part of the apex seal is what touches the inside of the housings. And that's where you get your compression from. All the jokes about apex seals, here they are. And that's the most important surface of them. They are PTS seals. They did come in a PTS box. This actually does say super seal on it, so it's pretty obvious to tell what and where and how. This is what has been in the engine for all those years, and this is what was in it most recently. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Finally, moment for him to start packing the rotors. That should be rotor 1. We're going to use the springs from the 4 rotor. So the rotor 1's corner pieces are right here. Rotor 1's apex seals. So then rotor 1's corner apex seals, we got 3 of them right there. Modify them.
I watched a YouTube video that told me how to do it.
Everything looking good? Feeling good?
Yeah, it's a little tight.
It was popping.
Yep.
Oh yeah. The process is actually pretty straightforward. He's putting the springs in underneath the seals. He's got the corner seals, all 3 of those in, just sitting there for placement and spacing, and then taking the side seals and just checking to see if they fit in there between the corner seals. If they don't fit, if they're too long, like the ones that I bought on purpose, you then take them down until they do fit. And then, of course, there's very exact tolerances and whatnot, but to be honest, when you get to the point of doing it as much as he is, you know, it's a feel. It's an emotion. They all did fit on this rotor at some point, so we're going to try each one, see if you can get the right fit first before you start modifying any of them. My favorite petroleum jelly onto this, partially to stick them in place, partially to lubricate them to test them out. Checking apex seal to corner seal to the actual notch on the rotor. Those are the oil control rings, and they've got the green, basically gasket, rubber seal. O-ring, thank you. Getting the wrong word there. That's, doing a lot of the sealing, but then they're also touching the face of the iron themselves. Those are the 3 side seals that I bought from Racing Beat. We're going to take one of those. One of those is going to go onto that front rotor. Curious to see if it's long or... Yeah, good. So yeah, that's the type that comes a little extra long, so you can grind it to your exact desired length. Of course, you want to do it by hand if you're being really obsessive, but when you know how to do it, this works too. Here's rotor 2. I've got rotor 2 done. Infamous rotor number 3. This is our most formidable foe right there.
What's that side seals on there? It doesn't matter.
All on oil control rings.
You have a stone?
Yes.
This little round part here that faces down goes into the rotor. This side sticks up, and what it does is the oil control ring has notches. When this goes in, this actually goes against that notch and allows it where it won't spin. So if you put them in backwards, it'll allow them to basically spin past it. The way that you put the rotor together is directional to the stationary gear.
On the first two rotors, the stationary gear is coming up from the bottom, and then the last stationary gear, right here, comes in from the top. And so that, actually, when you put them all together, one of the rotors is spinning backwards. They aren't, but relative to the gear on the side.
5,
6. Feeling any different? He's playing with rings. Well, while he's working that over, I'm going to work over something I did with the all-wheel drive 4-rotor engine, and that is get this taper clear of any sort of oil or anything that could cause it not to hold grip. That's the front counterweight. There we go. Well, that was weird. There's no keyway in there or anything that could have caused that. Huh. So this part is just like a normal 2-rotor, but it's this part right here, it's chewed up right there, that is the important taper that needs to stay dry and clean. We'll hit it with some acetone. Really need to break down any of the oils. Not only this side of the taper, but also the side it connects to here. I'm going to preheat the metal to give me, basically, to help it release any of the rest of the oils that are on here. Just gently. And you can see it coming out. It's hard to see with the GoPro, but you can actually see the surface oil. And of course, you don't want to go too hot and then start changing the properties of the metal. That's not a good idea. Hopefully you guys can see some of the glistening. I got the engine stand all ready, and that's what this is, and that's connected to the fat iron right there. This engine's not just a little, it's completely different than the 4-rotor to assemble. There is some similarity, and of course, just like everybody loves making jokes about Doritos and stacking them, that part is still definitely the case. Instead of starting from the very center, we're starting from an off-centered weird piece, and we're actually gonna build the front first. So we're building a 1-rotor first, and then we'll flip it back over and then continue up to here. So we'll actually end up, what you see right here is how we're gonna end up shortly. That's
built from here back.
Oh, they're up.
Flip it over.
Oh, and then you do the front? Oh, okay, so what I just said, guys, completely reversed. I do have that pin for that, so let me grab that. Now that she's prepped, ready to go, I've just brought out the coolant seals we bought spare for the other 4-rotor. You'll see that little union on the orange one right there. You always want to put that towards the intake. That's the coldest side of the engine. So that's the weakest part of the coolant seal. You don't want to put that over there. Here goes the first rotor housing. Look at that semi-peripheral housing. It's just going to take in so much air with the secondary port, the side port, and the primary port. All three have air coming right in.
I don't know which way it goes. Which way's hit point? Never done a 3-rotor.
Oh, I don't either.
So, which is fine. It doesn't matter. Down's fine.
The rotor is in. This is the beginning. I am the Apex Seal Man. Proud of my job. Seal one big Apex spring, one small Apex spring. This guy back in. So what I'm feeling for on the backside is this is hooking onto the backside of the Apex seal, so that's what I'm feeling for when I'm pushing it down. And then the little baby one fits in its groove. Oh, that's painful. That one should be good. Okay, that one should be ready for a corner. This, just to make sure that's the super seal. This feels so good having the 3-rotor assembled. This just doesn't even seem real. Got the first rotor in. He's prepping the intermediate iron, or the middle iron, Cosmo middle iron. There's a lot of different names for all these things. It'd be like what you'd find in a normal 2-rotor, except it's a Cosmo port, so it's much taller. We are making really good progress. It feels great. You can tell the stuff's used compared to the beautiful situation we had rebuilding that 4-rotor. That was just unfair because it was all brand new. It felt great.
Alright, we're gonna have to lift the eccentric shaft. It's gotta go up to make the bend. Up more, right there.
Okay. I don't know. Oh, the only thing it might be, better not hit on these.
No, it looked like it was, I had it all together.
I think the only real dangerous part about this process is that there are a couple major steps, but you can kind of get caught up and then forget to put an O-ring in on the oil line up here, or you can do, you can just get so caught up into the process. You're like, oh yeah, I got it all, and then you forget one of the steps. That seems like the most likely problem when building rotaries. Otherwise, it's very straightforward, and clearly, even I can do it. Right there. This is rotor number 3's time to shine, and this is the infamous rotor. So I want to document and prove that we are in fact using the correct rotor, the one that I've been talking about this whole time. She lost her face, but there is the spot right there. All right, so this is the mistake I made once before, is you start spinning this when it's on the lobe, you just kind of rotate it. That's what starts spinning these corner seals, which And just go straight down from here. Yep, that one's not going in all the way. I think it was that little shimmy at the last second. Pull this guy straight back out. I feel like it's gonna go through it. Yep. Okay, cool. Straight down. Whew. That seriously hurts my soul. Just the pride side of it. It's just like, okay, cool. You put all the effort into making it as locked in as possible. There we go. Now that we have rotor number 3 in, you can see it's the same rotor. We're now ready to put the rear iron on. Interesting enough, I forget because I bought the engine like this, but all Cosmos, all 3 rotors came automatic. So this is technically considered automatic rear iron. And the auto rear irons are known for being stronger. There's more meat in certain places.
Yeah, those.
Yeah, those are for the one rotor. Those are for the those are going through the dowels, right?
Yep.
Yeah. God, the 4 rotor just seems like such a better thought out
Yes.
design.
Not that one, not that one.
Cause see how this one's longer? I wonder if this
See,
one...
these have...
Yeah, the M.
And...
That's good. Okay, I'm confused. I'll look at... No O-ring on the rear stationary. Just kidding. Oh.
No rear seal.
Yeah, no rear. There we go.
Couldn't afford that.
No, I could not.
Had to sell some more shirts to get that seal.
Yeah, someday. Someday. Next, 6 rotor. Do you want to put...
No, because you got a hoover.
Well, we've now spun it the other way. Now I gotta clean off that. Now she's spun upside down. I got the bottom side done, and then it's time to do the final rotor.
Hold those pins.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to take them out.
Oh, sorry. Went the wrong way.
I have flipped it.
I was so not ready for the obvious. I was like expecting it to go like flipped. I was like, oh, okay. Isaiah donated his E-shaft key to the cause. And shit. Which one?
I think that one's yours.
Yeah. This is over there. Wait, no, this says Isaiah on it. Oh, wow. Yeah, this one's got to be my... Yeah, this one's all damaged. Sorry, Isaiah, I would have almost screwed you over because I don't know why I set them that way. Well, that was a bit of a pain in the ass. Rotor number 1.
No, it's not the
The E shaft.
E shaft is not down all the way.
Yep. Okay. So she's ready for apex seals. Put that in. The big spring in. Baby one says no. Here we go. Okay, you guys can imagine rinsing, repeating that. The last seal. Oh, it's pissy because of the exhaust. That's funny. I can actually just push it through the exhaust.
Does that makes it easy?
Yeah. Oh, because it's slightly off. That's okay. Here you go, guys. That's the last apex seal of the 3-rotor, all in. It leaves us with just this. And the keg gets closed. Bolts to put on.
Bolt, yeah, so.
This short one. These all go through the front.
One more fatty.
One more fatty right there. Yeah. Okay, spinning it back over. I guess before we start, are they all the same length too?
Nope.
Okay, so yeah, those two big ones go on the outer bottom legs. So it seems like all of our challenges have been related to the new used fat iron. Whoever powder coated didn't cover anything. And so not only were the ports completely powder coated on the inside, but so were a lot of the threads. Oh, you want to spin it, don't you?
Yep.
Okay. It feels so weird. What a cool moment. Started this whole shop, you know, with this, like all my toys broken.
This one's been broke for a while, huh?
Yeah. So thankfully, again, McFadden Dale came through, and since I don't have any of my front or rear stationary gear bolts, we got these 10-9 bolts and lock washers to solve my problem. So we're gonna go ahead and get all those on the front and the rear, and we should be good to go. Now with all the stationary gear bolts in on both sides and torqued properly, I'm gonna work on one of the funniest parts of a rotary engine to me. And that is the whole front of the engine. There's just a lot of weird stuff going on up here. And if you're not familiar, even if you are familiar, it's still just really confusing at first. This being one of the most important pieces right here. This is very specific, and I think, hopefully it hasn't worn off yet. Yeah, there's a C, Charlie on there. And that's for the size of spacer this is. It comes in very handy. So we've got this, we've got some needle bearings, some chain, some weird gears, some worm gears. We got a lot of different things. The most important part of all of this, to me, is these parts right here. This is all what is considered end float or end play or anything like that. And that was something that was very important about the 4-rotor that I checked off camera, because when we rebuilt the engine, I never checked it. And what end float is, or end play, is this. You're pushing, I'll hold it so the camera can see it. All you're doing is basically controlling how much the engine moves in and out. Of course, when it's doing that, it's actually hitting either the E-shaft or the rotors against things inside the engine. What you're actually doing here is controlling it from an area here. The biggest problem with all of this is, you see this guy here, this spacer goes like this, right? So you can see they're meant to work together. Well, the problem is when you start playing with a motor with things apart or not sitting up like this can actually fall off of this ridge right there and then fall behind it. And then when you go to put everything back on, you actually crush this roller bearing onto, the weight of it will go down like that and you'll crush it onto this. So sad. Even though I'm using really strong bolts, the actual torque on these are very weak compared to what you would think. So if you notice, barely any pressure on these. And that's the goal here. I think they're like 17 foot-pounds. I made a mistake once before on the Corvette, of all things, is that when I put that front cover on it, I torqued these to like 40 or something. I torqued them, I saw a number and torqued them to that in foot-pounds, and they were actually that in, they were inch-pounds, so it ended up being completely wrong. I honestly, if you don't do it for a little while, even though I did all of this on the other 4-rotor, I still look at it and go, shoot, what order do these things go in? Okay. All right. All of this ends up hiding behind this plate, the parts that matter. So that's why this one can fall and you wouldn't even notice it. So this guy goes on first, and it's hitting the E shaft. It is not hitting, I just want to point that out because this is where it gets confusing. This is actually sitting on the edge of the E shaft lobe. So this spins with the E shaft. Then we've got one of these, right? But that means nothing without the spacer. So let's get the spacer on there. And this, you can see right now, this is where you'd run into problems if the engine fell apart. Okay? And then we've got this. And then you would have another one of these. So that part's not spinning with the motor, but everything else inside of here is. And so that plate that was under here, we'll pop it back up. That plate is, and so that plate would, and ultimately if you do this step wrong, you would crush this bearing. So that's why this spacer matters so much. Ultimately, this is the end piece here. You see this is kind of an insert. I'm sure it actually probably pops out. Yep. This would be the backside of all of that. I just want to show you guys what matters, nothing else. Smooth surface on here for a bearing. And if you notice, there's that surface right here, which is this surface right here is going to mate with this spacer. So if the spacer's the wrong thickness, you're gonna have problems. If it's too thick, say if the spacer's too thick, everything's gonna be able to be really sloppy. If it's too thin, well, this whole piece is gonna come down and crush the bearings, and the engine won't be able to move back and forth like that. Good. So I guess you can crush that too. Oh no, you can see right there. It's common for people to put this on before they put the key on. But there you go. You can't test any of this without having the bolt on here and all of your other things pushing down on this. These are all fine. You can make these any length you want, to be honest, as long as there's pressure from the front nut to this. None of that affects any of these parts, only because that would affect how high this nut goes on here. That's it. Even just tightening these down properly brought it where you can actually feel a ledge right here, which would in fact give me an aspect of in play. Front part of the E shaft has to come down. Not that it really has the same effect, but things have to fully settle in the motor, and this does have removable lobes, so that lobe does make a difference. Just put that back on, torque the nut fully, and then let's see how that affects inflow. Hopefully it comes back. I might have to amplify it, but it really makes this tunk, 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 tunk. And it's super small amount, but you can just feel it's off. It's supposed to be about 0.4 of an inch, give or take. You know, you can look up your specs for yours. This is just me sharing what my experience is. This little guy is probably one of the most important, it almost looks like a rotary engine by itself, but this is one of the most important pieces to the puzzle. On my 4-rotor, you'll know that I have a oil pump right here. This is the RX-7 stock oil pump for most of the rotaries. And it works similar to the rotary engines inside of here, just not triangles. It sucks oil in from down here up to this passage, rotates it through, kind of like a supercharger in a sense, and then shoots it out through this passage right here. Of course, this one's blocked off on this, so it goes blocked off down here too. So it goes through this front hole on the cover and then out to the oil coolers, and then the oil coolers come back and feed it to all the bearings. So that's similar to the 4-rotor in that sense. Pretty straightforward. That's there. And if you'll notice, I am missing the oil pressure regulator, but that'll be installed before I put the oil pan on. This is the gear-driven piece to the puzzle. That'll, of course, go on like that. Find its little key, if it didn't just knock it off. Oh, it's right there. And then, there you go. So this is belt-driven, chain belt-driven, and so we need to make sure that we get this piece to line up with this piece, and I think it's pretty obvious how that goes. Nice, perfect. That was easy enough. And this one will not be used, but we need it for the correct spacing, or at least some element of spacing, but this would actually drive the OMP, the oil metering pump. We'll just set it on there as well. That fits on to the front cover. This worm gear looking thing connects to this right in here, and that would spin, and there would be an oil metering pump pumping oil, pulling oil from the crankcase and pumping it into each of the rotors. Thankfully, I have none of that. Let's go ahead and put this on. And as you can imagine, you can't do it just like that. This is one of those things where you don't really want the key on here yet, because you can spin it to use it to your advantage to get these pieces on. Get close, there we go. Connected oiling system. Okay, so here's the front key. I'm gonna try and do this before I run out of footage. And there we go. The last part of the keys goes right through this piece. There it is. Now I can't put this on until the front cover goes on, but we can at least put it on like this to keep it in place, and so the inflow stuff doesn't fall out. Everything is reassembled except for this. Oh my god. See, you get so used to narrating YouTube videos. Oh, there we go. Okay, that took a little bit of suggestion. Okay, we're about ready to put the front cover on, but we have to do a little bit of bolt work, clean those up before we put that on, but it is close. Once we put the front cover on, then goes the oil pan. Now that I've got all of these special bolts all accounted for and into their correct depths, it's finally time to torque these down. We're gonna do the standard process, which is getting them all evenly to 10 foot-pounds of torque, then 20, and then 30. Then we're gonna go ahead and do the same on the back side.
I hate the amount of time it took, but very satisfied with everything. Where it goes to now I can physically see where it's supposed to go, like everything has.
I could not find that washer or that nut to save my life, and they were right in front of me the whole time. As I went and got the O-ring, which I had the nylon washer part for.
That's how we fixed it. So all this is blocked off, so nothing goes through there.
Okay, nice.
So there's nothing that can go up through there. So there's nothing.
Yeah, that's paper, so it's gonna rip. It's not gonna slip on that way. You have to like eye it. Oh, there. Never mind. Just kidding. It's totally joking with you. I had to work that over it. I also marked on the side of this. I etched it down.
A lot or just a little?
Just a little. But I took the paint off of it so I could mark.
Just on the lower side?
Both sides. Oh, right here. It's really light, but I'm gonna mark it on the actual wheel. But that is where the key. It goes to the key, and the key, just like the 4-rotor, you know, the key's in there.
Okay.
The key goes 90 degrees. Goes this way when this is at top dead center for the front rotor.
I think that one goes in. That one
Time for the oil pressure regulator.
I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah, they list it as a specific PSI.
Oh, okay.
Just for the record, that was a Garrett like return line, or maybe even a feed line, one of the two. Any of them, yeah. Any of their gaskets, and he made the hole larger just by setting it on the block and just gently hitting with a ball peen hammer to have the edge cut out the center hole to the exact size. The oil pan, we first pulled it off, it just was bending in this corner, so.
I think it did that before, but I think.
Yeah. Here we're gonna go thick. This is a man after my own heart. He wouldn't normally do that level. I would, but it's the problem with this being a pan that's been used so many times, especially in that corner. It's just she's not coming back. So we're gonna make up for it.
Maybe it was something with all that grape stuff you put through it.
I got all excited.
It's destroyed.
Hey, this is a very important moment. Yeah,
What's that?
probably this part.
For sale, $3. That's it. Oh,
I found a lot of them. That was one of the things I loved about the other 4-rotor is that they upsized into M8, which that was cool. But they cleared, they went deep. The front cover definitely needs these shorter ones because the threading doesn't go all the way through fully. But we'll just continue pushing through.